Okay, so have you ever thought about like what marriage really means? Like legally. What if you're separated but not divorced and then you remarry? Could you like end up owing money to that second spouse? It sounds crazy, right? But that's exactly what happened in this Indian Supreme Court case that we're looking at today. It's based on an article from livelaw.in, and it's a wild one.
Yeah, this case really gets into, how complicated these situations can be. It's not just about the law, it's about the human side of things too.
Exactly. So basically, we've got this woman in India who is separated from her first husband, but they never officially divorced. And then she gets remarried, but that doesn't work out either. And now she's asking for maintenance, financial support from husband number 2. I bet some of you are thinking, wait a minute, isn't she still married to someone else?
Right.
And that's exactly what the second husband argued. You're like, I don't owe her anything because our marriage isn't even real legally.
And that's where things get really interesting, because legally, her second marriage is considered void. It never happened. It's because she was still legally married to her first husband.
So it went all the way to the Supreme Court in India.
It did.
What a mess.
Yeah.
So what did the Supreme Court decide? Did they say the second husband was off the hook?
Well, not exactly. They actually sided with the woman. They said she is entitled to maintenance from the second husband, even without a divorce from the first one.
Whoa. Even though the marriage wasn't technically legal, she can still get support from him.
That's right. And the reasoning behind it is super important. The court really focused on how vulnerable women can be during separation, especially if they weren't working outside the home. They said it's about a husband's duty to support his wife, not just a wife's right to receive support.
That's a really interesting point. It's not just about who's entitled to what, but about the responsibility within the relationship.
Exactly. And to really get this decision, we need to look at the law they were using. It's called Section 125 of the Code of Criminal Procedure in India.
Okay, so what's so special about this section?
Well, it's all about maintenance claims, and it's meant to protect spouses who can't support themselves financially. The court used this section to make sure the woman was taken care of, even though the marriage itself was a bit messy.
So they basically looked beyond the legal technicalities and focused on the human side of things.
You could say that.
And there's another detail from the article that adds a whole other layer to this.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, the second husband knew about the first marriage the whole time.
He did.
So he wasn't tricked or anything.
Nope. He knew what he was getting into.
And the court took that into account.
Absolutely. They considered it when making their decision.
So it's like they're saying you can't just ignore your obligations because of a technicality.
Yeah.
Especially if you knew about the situation all along.
Right.
This is getting complicated. We've got relationships, a marriage that's not really a marriage, and a court decision that shakes things up. What does it all mean?
Well, it definitely raises questions about how separation and marriage work in India and what might happen in the future.
I can't wait to hear more.
We'll definitely dive deeper after the break.
Welcome back. So before the break, we were talking about how even though this marriage wasn't like legally valid, the woman could still get maintenance. Mm-hmm. What's this mean for the future? Does this change things?
Yeah, this ruling is a big deal because it kind of says that you don't always need a formal divorce to figure out these legal issues. The court really focused on the fact that she was separated, in reality, even if it wasn't official.
So could this mean that more people might try to get maintenance from, other partners, even if they haven't officially ended things with someone else?
It's possible. It could definitely give people in similar situations like a reason to think they have a case. But it's important to remember that every case is different. The court's always going to look at the details,
Right. And remember how we talked about how the second husband knew about the first marriage?
Yeah.
That seems like it was a really important part of the decision.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't like he was tricked or anything. He knew the whole situation.
It's like the court was saying, you can't just use a technicality to get out of your responsibilities.
Yeah, you can't just pretend you didn't know.
Exactly.
But what's interesting is that this case focuses on the woman's rights, right? But what about the second husband? What about his rights?
Oh, wow. I hadn't thought about that. What do you mean?
Well, could he try to get some kind of legal recognition? Or even maybe claim some rights, like a spouse would have?
Whoa, okay, this is blowing my mind.
Right.
It seems like we're just scratching the surface here.
Exactly. And remember, this article only talks about the woman's side. What about the first husband?
Oh, yeah, what about him? Could he have to pay maintenance too?
It's a good question. And you can see how this one case opens up so many other questions.
Yeah, it's like the more we talk about it, the more complicated it gets.
And that's what happens with these big legal decisions. They change things, but they also bring up a whole bunch of new questions.
Do you think this could lead to changes in the law in India?
It's possible. Maybe they'll have to clarify some things or update the laws about marriage and family.
Yeah, because things are changing, right? The way people view relationships and families is different now.
Exactly. And the law needs to keep up.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the legal stuff, but what about the human side of all this? What can we learn from this story?
Well, it reminds us that relationships are complicated and communication is key.
Absolutely.
You need to be open and honest with each other, and sometimes you might even need legal agreements to protect yourselves.
It's a good reminder for all of us, no matter where we live. All right, we're back, and we've talked about all the legal twists and turns, but you know what? This case really makes you think, even if you're not a lawyer. Like, what does it all mean for us regular folks?
Well, at the heart of it, it's about commitment.
Right.
And responsibility, and how our ideas about marriage are changing.
Yeah, and it makes you realize how important it is to be on the same page.
Exactly.
Like, you really need to talk to your partner, be open about what you expect.
Totally.
And sometimes, maybe even think about getting things in writing, legally.
Yeah, sometimes that's important, especially if things get complicated.
It's like better safe than sorry, right?
Definitely.
And this case shows how the law needs to change, too.
Yeah, as society changes, the law needs to catch up. It needs to be fair to everyone.
It's pretty amazing how this one case in India could actually make a difference. It's like, it's pushing the boundaries of what marriage means.
Yeah.
Legally.
It really is.
It's a reminder that things aren't set in stone, you know?
Yeah.
The law can evolve.
And sometimes it takes a case like this to get things moving.
We started off asking what wife really means.
Right.
And it turns out it's not so simple.
Nope. It's a lot more complicated than you might think.
And that definition is changing, both in the real world and in the courts.
I think the big takeaway here is